morning, Guam, and thanks for starting your day the KUAM way. It's Group Chat. I'm Chris Barnett. Remember, a starting lineup every weekday. We do a Facebook live show, and today's Group Chat. We're kind of continuing the theme that we started last week. It's a common theme on the Group Chat show, Decolonization. Of course, we had Dr. Robert Underwood and his wife Narissa in to talk about the march. And today we have the Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization, Mr. Melvin Won Pat Borja. We didn't get to talk to you about the march, so just, I guess right off the bat, the feeling that we got from Dr. Underwood was that this is kind of like the time, you know. I mean, I feel like there's a convergence of all these different, issues with indigenous pride and culture and language, and it's leading to this kind of like perfect storm of support. I mean, 2,000 people, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably the biggest gathering we've had since the 80s, maybe. I think that prior to that, the largest gathering was when Dave Davis first filed the case. There was a Respect the Chamorro People rally that gathered about 650 people.
Right. And that's kind of I was thinking, wow, they're going to get 700.
Yeah, I was really excited about the march. I think the most encouraging thing for me was that the march was not a government sanctioned event. It wasn't a COD event. It was really organized by a bunch of different grassroots organizations, and I was really encouraged to see the amount of engagement on behalf of our community. You know, it's one thing for our community to engage in the conversation and to participate in the dialogue. It's a totally different thing to have people actually mobilize and come out physically.
Right.
And to see that number of people and the diversity in that crowd, there was a whole group of Filipinos who banded together and try to come out in solidarity and support. Yeah, Yappies, Shukis, there was a group of white folks there. I mean, there was a very diverse crowd, and I thought it was really nice to see that people were really engaging in the issue, and people were not just coming out to march, but to have conversations and to talk to people and to expand their perspective. And so, we really got behind the effort, because for our purposes, it's, we're all about education. And so when we see people engaging in the conversation like this, it's a good sign. It means that the community is hungry for information, and that that they have some connection to this topic, something that goes beyond the politics of it. And I think that that's very important, because those are the things that allow us longevity in the conversation. Those are the things that allow us to continue this conversation, continue this dialogue, no matter how difficult it gets. And that commitment is key for us if we're going to really elevate the amount of awareness in our community.
What I thought was really cool was that you always see the same 50 people, and it's
the
Mike,
usual suspects,
right, Victoria, and the statehood weirdos and whatnot. So we're kind of expecting that, but what I've always kind of said with these guys is that the academics. I mean, sure, that they're a big part of it, but there has to be some kind of way for academics to dumb it down. I mean, if you will, I hate to use that term, and connect with like grassroots people, like you said. And I thought that was really the biggest victory, is that it wasn't just a march with, Mike Bavacqua and Robert Underwood. It was a march where you saw all these different, and they were a grassroots group. I mean, we're talking about people who have like 9-to-5 jobs, people who work for a living. I mean, it was just, it was crazy. And I was going back to what someone had told me when the Dave Davis decision came out, that, it was a blessing. And at the time I was just like, God, you're crazy. But I feel like it kind of is serving as this impetus, and and
it really is.
I mean, no matter what the decision was going to be, we were going to have this conference this weekend. But I feel like things are kind of snowballing, and I like it. And so we had this march, and we're riding that vibe right into this decolonization conference, which is this week.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that just in the timing of everything and the way that things have kind of been evolving organically. And I wanted to touch on what you were saying about this idea of accessibility to the conversation. I think you're right. A lot of times when we talk about decolonization, we talk about self-determination, oftentimes the conversation is very exclusive, right? It really is happening in the academic circles with the intellectuals, and that's great. You know, those are the people that we really want to be involved in the conversation, but that's not the way that we're going to educate the community as a whole. And you're absolutely right. There has to be a deliberate focus and effort to bring the attention to the masses, right? And to make it accessible to the common person. And that's something that we're really trying to be deliberate with doing this conference. You know, we've had a really high demand for people to attend the conference. Unfortunately, the capacity is very limited at the Sheraton. And so what we did was we engaged in an MOA with PBS to live broadcast the conference and to also record it for rebroadcast. And in addition to rebroadcasting it, what we're trying to do is to take the content of the recordings and really try to sift through it and find these gems, right? And find these sections of it that we feel are very accessible, that are very pertinent, and use them as a way to create more accessibility to the information. And so we will then take the recording of the conference and start breaking it down into short PSAs and content that we can use for mass media.
And that's going to go along with the education campaign.
Right. So we're actually doing the same thing with the study. We're currently we just contracted a scholar for the self-governance study. A team has just submitted their application to do the second half of the study, which is the political status analysis and predictory models. And so, you know, a study like this is really valuable, and it's going to have a lot of great information. But going back to your point, you know, of the exclusiveness of this information, you know, a study like of this magnitude is something that the average person is not going to sit down and read, you know, in their free time. And so we have to be realistic about that. Even though we value it and we know there's a lot of great information, it's not enough to just do the study and assume that everyone's going to read it.
Someone's got to go through and take the data out and, you know, put it in a format that's easy for
Absolutely. And so that's also a part of our contract with PBS, is to really dissect the study and pick it apart and be able to present it in smaller, more digestible pieces, so that, you know, our community can get a better idea of the process of decolonization, of, you know, the predictions of how a change in political status will affect all of us. And that's really our goal, you know, is to be able to create real clear accessibility to the information, and we're hoping that this conference is a step in that direction. So, you know, we're bringing in experts from all around the region and the Caribbean. What's exciting about it is that for a lot of people in our community, decolonization is this like big new scary thing, when in actuality we've been doing this work for decades.
Right.
And so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to highlight some of the things that have been done here, but also trying to highlight some of the things that have been done around the world and other places, and really learn from the experiences of these experts. And so
who are some of the experts? I mean, I've seen the roster, but I know you got the official word. So who are some of the people that are coming?
We are going to be welcoming from our region. We'll be welcoming the former president of Palau. We'll be also featuring Dr. Carlisle Corbin from the U.S. Virgin Islands, who's also a United Nations expert. We'll be featuring a woman named Wilma Colazo, who is a legal expert from Puerto Rico. Mililani Trask, who's also another legal expert coming from Hawaii.
Right.
We're welcoming Leland Bettis, who I'm actually really excited about. Leland Bettis is actually the former director of the Commission on Self-Determination, and he was actually very instrumental in the Commonwealth negotiations. We'll also be welcoming the Lieutenant Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Tregenza Roche, and Dan Aga, who is from American Samoa. He's the director of the Political Status Commission in American Samoa. So we have a really great slate of experts who have a lot of experience on their home front, but also have a lot of experience dealing with both the federal negotiations and with the international side of the conversation. And so what we really hope to happen is to create these very clear parallels and allow our community to understand what the experiences are, the critical perspective, the challenges, where they've been successful, where they failed, and how we can learn from these experiences as we proceed forward in our push for decolonization.
Right, and so just tell us the format. Or I mean, are these guests all going to be speaking? They're going to be doing speeches.
Yeah, so what we did was we tried to organize them in panels. So we're trying to really bring like a Micronesian perspective and focus on some of the leaders within our region, the Caribbean perspective. We also are being deliberate about how we present information locally. So we're going to be welcoming Professor Dr. Carlos Madrid from MARC, University of Guam, to talk a little bit about the Spanish colonial history, to put it into context. Dr. Bavaca will also be analyzing the American period. I'm excited to welcome the economist from the Bank of Guam, Joe Bradley. He's actually the only person who has done an economic impact study, but it's dated. It's about 16, 20 years old.
Right. Yeah.
And so, we definitely need more of that happening. And so it's exciting to be able to bring his perspective in. I think that the question about the economy and how...
Big questions, right?
Those are the big ones. Those are the ones that a lot of people really lean on and are really worried about. And so it's exciting to be able to...
They almost come with this like adversarial tone, like, well, what are you going to do if you...
Right, and I think that's the thing
Just
that
like
I'm really excited about. Yeah. I'm really excited to hear from an economist because, in that economic study, even though there are absolutely things that should raise concern from our community about the economic impact, but there are also a lot of things that highlight our potential and the way that we could prosper, if given a chance to decolonize, to change our political status. And so, it's going to be exciting to be able to hear these different perspectives and to be very critical. Obviously, it's not just all sunshine and rainbows. Decolonization is a long, difficult, strenuous process, and it's not going to be easy. But I think that what we're really looking at is, how do we push our island, our community, into the future?
Right.
And how do we anticipate what is going to happen next and how we can best be prepared for it. And for us, I found that in my assessment of our community, we are not in a place right now where we're just going to go right into it and start debating political status. I think that a lot of people still have questions about why we need to decolonize. A lot of people still are operating on misinformation about our current political status and what that means for us, how it affects us. And we see this a lot. For example, when we talk about the Compact of Free Association, a lot of people get upset about, oh, why is this happening? Why are all these people coming here? These people are creating this negative impact on our community, blah, blah, blah. But what we don't talk about is why this is happening and why Guam was never a part of the negotiations. I mean, look at where we're at now. We have our governor asserting that she wants to be involved in compact negotiations. And we're only just deciding or trying to figure out, are we going to be included, and are we going to be included as a participant or an observer? And I think that that's a direct...
I think it's also funny that whatever our involvement is, we're just going to be happy to be involved in it.
Right. And
you're right. I get the point. People look around. We don't control the immigration. That's something that we would control in the event that we change our political status. But I gotta disagree with you though. I feel like the people who aren't on board and are still questioning the process are just doing that to play devil's advocate. I don't think their minds can be changed.
I definitely agree.
And I gotta call out the congressman because he's one of these guys that's in this position to really, knock on some doors in the nation's capital, but instead he kind of represents this, everyone's going to have to give up their passport or, this and that. And that's the fear-mongering, and I just don't address it because I feel like, and the march will show that most everybody else understands the process and why it needs to be done. And I feel like I'm on that. Let's just get educated already. I want to see what statehood, free association.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that it's exciting to think about what potential our community holds in terms of being ready and desiring this information. And so, I think that it's definitely challenging, but we still have a need, to understand the process. And I think that there are a lot of people who are more knowledgeable than others, and I would say that we really need those people to get involved. Keep in mind that our task forces are comprised of volunteers, and these guys have their own full-time jobs and responsibilities, and we really need our community to step up and take an active role. And the more that we see things like the march or, things that agitate our community, the more we see people getting involved, and that's what I take away from it. You know, is I really am encouraged to see that type of activity, and I'm hoping that in the future, you know, folks will be motivated to want to get involved and to play an active role.
Yeah, and I feel like these people, these naysayers, and these people who talk about, you know, you got to go see the Wizard of Oz or whatever. I mean, if you really love the U.S. presence here, and I mean, obviously it's a big part of our life, then why don't you get in the statehood? We have a whole option to become part of the U.S. here.
You know, I really think
that's what I say. You're right. They need to get involved with the process.
I think that that's one of the misconceptions also about decolonization. You know, is that a lot of people view decolonization as this vehicle that's going to take us farther and farther away from the United States, when in actuality decolonization is about empowerment.
Right.
And so for even for the people who desire a closer relationship to the United States, like you said, there's an option.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Right, that allows us to be closer. Yeah. But even in the other options, free association, independence, both of those allow opportunity for our community, our government, to also create a closer tie to the United States.
And I want to read this comment here, Mel, because I see this a lot as people, they hear decolonization, they think independence. I mean, I just see it so much, and people don't understand that decolonization is the process and independence is one of the options. But we have a comment here from Peter. Plebiscite is a useless waste of time, and Davis was a huge unnecessary distraction. Independence now is the starting point, and build from there. It's the moral imperative. Plebiscite useless?
I think that
obviously I feel like you disagree with that.
I do. I think that the value of the plebiscite is to create an opportunity for those who are colonized to have the opportunity to exercise their voice. I think it's irresponsible for us to ignore the history and what has happened in the past and why we are in this situation now. You know, the Organic Act obviously gave the people of Guam U.S. citizenship, but it also kind of tied us into this status, and it prevented us from having a more equitable relationship with the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, even with Puerto Rico, you know, Puerto Rico has a similar status to us, but they're an incorporated territory, you know, so even in that situation, you know, they're able to have a little bit more autonomy within the American system.
Right.
And we are. It's not perfect. Obviously, they're still undergoing their own challenges with self-determination, but, you know, I think that the plebiscite serves as a way for us to establish the exercising of the voice, right? If we don't exercise the voice, then how do we realistically pursue any given political status? Now, there are some people, obviously, like Peter, who assert that, you know, we should just assert our independence or assert what status we want. But I think that has to begin with the plebiscite, right? That begins with the plebiscite because we're allowed to then get an assessment of where our community is at. So, you know, I think that it's definitely a difficult conversation to have, but I think that the bottom line for me is that the status quo must go. The status quo is deficient.
Hell no, status quo.
Yeah, I'm working on a rhyme for it. You know,
yeah, I'm sure you got some rhymes, bro.
But you know, I think that when we think about about decolonization, obviously a big part of the conversation is assessing the current status, and a lot of people are very uneducated about the status. You know, I mean, you talk to the average person on Guam doesn't understand what the Jones Act is and how it affects us. I mean, that's clearly a status issue.
One of the biggest ones, yeah.
Right, absolutely, and it's something that impacts us, you know, in our everyday lives. I mean, obviously, immigration is another one. EITC, unfunded federal mandates. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Cockfighting, don't forget the cockfighting.
Yeah, don't forget the cockfighting. But you know, I think that when we look at the opportunities with a change in political status, we can see that there is a lot of potential for growth in our island, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to address some of the things that we, in a lot of ways, feel powerless to fix.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know,
preaching to the choir, bro.
Yeah.
Like you know, and we got a comment here from Jess, Pam Camacho. I don't even know how to unpack this comment, Jess, because you weren't very specific. I disagree with the decolonization. So how do you unpack a comment like that? I mean, where do you even start?
Well,
my thought is that's why waste time. Like, you disagree with it, oh fine, on to the next one. You know.
Well, I think that I think that that's not an uncommon statement. I think that there are a lot of people who are content with the status quo. It's kind of like the saying goes, right? The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And I think that a lot of people, they are familiar enough with the status and they've grown comfortable enough to be complacent.
Right. Yeah,
But
and I think that's one of the biggest challenges for you guys is telling people that, and that's why I feel like it's degrees. I had this conversation with somebody last week where they compare it to Hong Kong and they compare Guam and they say, oh well, China's a real tyrant, and this is one of my close friends. But I don't think anyone's saying that it's the same stuff that's going on in Hong Kong. I think that there's degrees of it, and whereas people like, I guess, Jess and Pam, they disagree with decolonization because there's that fear that they have. We're like, oh, what's going to happen? We have to give up our passports. But I think that's why I don't subscribe to the personal or the emotional argument about decolonization. I'm more of like, these political things like the Jones Act and, immigration issues. They're more compelling than telling someone who's got a pretty comfortable life, which we do have, that, decolonization is causing them pain. A lot of times it's a hard sell. But when you start talking about this is why your groceries are expensive, this is why the cost of living is so high, this is why we have these problems with migrants, and, being able to kind of clue them in on that's why we need decolonization. I think it's a much easier argument to make.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think that again, that goes back to education and our understanding of our current status. I think that a lot of people just are operating on a lot of misinformation or are,
or no information.
Unaware. Yeah, or no information.
Right.
I think that that's pretty accurate. And so, that's definitely part of the role that the commission will play is that, the way that I look at it is that the commission itself, we manage the 3 task forces, right? And the task forces, their job is to educate on their particular status that they're advocating for. Whereas the commission itself, our job is to educate on the status quo and about the need for decolonization, the process of decolonization.
Yeah.
We're not here to advocate for any particular status. In my opinion, I personally think that we suffer when any particular task force is not actively engaging. We as a whole suffer because then it creates a situation where people they're missing information, right?
Yeah.
They're not able to get a proper assessment.
Yes, we're calling out free association and statehood. I just got to call them out because, and that's why people, decolonization, independence, that's why they think that is because the Independence Task Force is the one that's out there doing meetings, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and I feel like there's that lack of the voice in the conversation from 2 of the major options that I feel like a lot of people would get behind.
Yeah,
so
and I
get
think
on it. Let's go,
Well, we really are doing our best to support all the task forces and to put them in a position where they can be successful. And I have to say that as much as we can complain about inactivity, I think that the commission itself has to take some responsibility. The commission has been very inactive for quite some time, and we have to, we got to step up, and that's really what we've been doing since I took on this role.
So you have to go tell Uncle Eloy, hey, let's go, Uncle.
Well, we definitely, I'm happy to say that we have a pretty good working relationship with all the task forces. We have been very deliberate about sitting down with them and meeting with them and assessing what all of our needs are and what our challenges are and how we can best support them. We're excited that we've positioned the commission in such a way where we will be able to roll out a lot more content than we have in the past.
Good.
We will be able to create more opportunity for discussion, and I think that has to be the impetus for the other task forces to get involved, and I think that we'll see that a lot more once we get rolling.
Right. I got it, man. The time. I just want to bring it back to the conference. You said that there wasn't a lot of room, but is this something that anybody can go to and sit in?
Yeah.
And
So
listen?
the conference was actually open to the public. It's free of charge. We were flooded with requests for people to attend the conference. We actually just finished filling out the last seats. We actually had to go back in and ask the Sheraton to expand the capacity so we could accommodate more people in the public. And we're fully at capacity now. So we're really encouraging folks to watch on Channel 12. It'll be broadcasted live. It'll also be on YouTube and Facebook. And so we're hoping that people will tune in if they can't be there physically. But there will also be a rebroadcast, and so we're really hoping that this conference is something that people will want to listen to and will want to catch. And I think that the bigger thing is what happens afterward. How does this conversation evolve after the conference is done?
And I think what you said earlier about kind of mining the conference and the speeches for content to get out there.
Yes, definitely.
It's a good way to get that info. Well, Mel, what time is the conference on Wednesdays?
Check-in is going to start at 8, so we should be underway by around 8:30.
So Friday?
Thursday and Friday,
okay.
and it'll run until 5 p.m.
Nice. Okay, so there you go. Is this the first ever?
Actually, no. There was a self-determination conference back in the 90s.
Wow.
So, there hasn't been.
Who was around in the 90s? Huh. So the second ever.
Yes.
There you go. So like I said in closing, I feel like this is the time, the movements are rising, the turnout for, support of decolonization was, I think, pretty awesome. And you're seeing these movements around the globe with indigenous people and, the awareness that they're raising for their causes. And I think, Guam is just next in line for some assurance.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to see the deliberate parallels that we're going to draw between us and other people who have encountered
and the insights too. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to take away a lot of insight. Yes. All right, Mel. So
thank you.
Always a pleasure, man, to have Mel on here.
Me.
Guys, I wanted to get him to spit some spoken word at the end of the thing, but he's got his executive director. One day.
I'm going to do both pretty soon.
All right. Hey, this has been a group chat. Again, if you like the show, share it around. Get your friends, especially a lot of people in the decolonization movement, and people who aren't even. If you want to find out more info, I felt like we covered a lot of ground. My name's Chris. This has been a group chat for KUAF starting lineup edition of Facebook Live shows. Estajos!
Yes.